And today on Talking Gearheads, we have Anthony Sanchez of The Car Culture visiting with us to talk about his car show business and his history and how he got started. Brought to you by World Motorsports. We have the very best of what you need for your European performance car. Welcome to Talking Gearheads. I'm your host, Frank Lee, brought to you by World Motorsports. And today our guest is the infamous Anthony Sanchez. Anthony, thank you so much for being on today.
Absolutely. How you doing, Frank?
Man, it's been a while. Talk to me. What is Anthony Sanchez up to?
So today or like in the past, I don't know, because I haven't seen you in 6 months, 8 months. It's been some time, huh?
I just send you dirty text messages.
You and everybody else in Houston. So.
Right. So no, what I know that you have a couple of things going on.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
So, on the day-to-day, I do a lot of different type of marketing things, marketing, business development for a few companies. And then by night, it's car culture. So really kind of more on the, everybody sees the events, whenever they're put together, but they don't ever see the back end, all the prep that goes into. And
well, let's talk about the events, because as a podcast, we're a local podcast. The focus is local.
Right.
And in motorsports talk, or for me, it's really automotive industry talk. Mm-hmm. And car shows are a big part of the automotive culture here in Houston.
They are.
So let's start with that, because I think that's what you're kind of famous for.
Yeah, I would say so. And, so, God, where do I begin? I started...
Well, how did you start car shows?
Car shows. So that was just a big accident, really. It was a school service project that went rogue.
A school service project?
Yeah.
So, in high school?
High school, yeah.
What
so
grade?
I was a senior when I started the SJ Automotive Club, and
the what?
The SJ Automotive Club, Strake Jesuit. So that's where I went to school.
Oh, okay.
I went to summer school all 3 years.
Only Jesuits allowed in your car club?
At the time, yeah, because it was all that was there. But I went to summer school all 3 years because I wasn't the best student. I was always I always had 1A. You
mean required summer school?
The first year, yes. The first year was required. No, I failed biology. F, big time. It wasn't big time. I think I entered it with a 65 or something, but it was very much so an F. So it was shit, I gotta go to summer school. I gotta get this pulled up, or else, I'm getting kicked. I'm getting the boot. So, but the other 2 years, it was I'd gotten D's in classes. It's all right, let's take the summer school class to get the grade up. Because it was very much so, my parents are they're first generational college students. So they were that's what they know. So it was yep. You got to go to college. That's the only way for success. And it was God damn.
That was drilled into my head.
Yeah. So they were no, you need to go to summer school. You need to get these grades up. And so I was okay. So anyways, I was in my junior year going into senior year of summer school. I was in an English class, and there was this friend of mine that I had. His name was Jacob, and Jacob, we had been kind of we weren't best friends, but we were friends. He's somebody that I would have lunch with at school. Somebody that I could joke around with in class. But I saw him on Facebook Marketplace in that summer school class looking at Supras, and I was what are you looking at Supras for? And he was he had another tab up pull. He was looking at 2Js, and so I was okay, you're a car guy if you're looking at 2Js. So I was what are you looking at this for? Oh, I'm a huge fan of the 2Js or whatever, and they're about to come, because this was 2014. So they were just about I think the 89s were just becoming street legal, right after the Mark IIIs or going. I don't know when the Mark IV started. I think it was 92 actually. But
let me take one moment to interrupt you.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not as up to date on the terminology we're talking about, his friend who's looking at 2Js, as he referred to it. For those of us in the industry, he's referring to the 2JZ motor. That's the large displacement inline six found in Toyotas for a very long time, and Nissans in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And into the 90s, with the final iteration of the Toyota Supra, it was the dominant sports car of the era.
Oh, yeah. Even today, they still use them in a lot of drag race applications, because one of the companies that I worked with, ProSpeed, they built a lot of drag cars and one of their cars. What is it? White Rice, I think, it's a 2J block.
Well, let's go a little bit into the history of that, because even TX2K used to be the Supra Nationals.
Yeah.
Which was the first big.
I didn't know that until recently.
Yeah.
I didn't know that until recently.
And it was 4 Toyota Supras, and it was for the fastest of the Toyota Supras in roll racing, drag racing. They even did autocross courses and road courses for an overall. And then it wasn't until other makes and models were able to produce that kind of horsepower.
Yeah, I think next came the GTRs and they were kind of like, they've been the king for the past, I'd say, 8 years. And then recently, I mean, underground racing.
A little firm from Italy.
Yeah, underground racing really stepped up their game this year at 2K. I didn't get to go. I was so upset. I was sick. I got this bad swing bug. But I know we've gotten kind of off course. So I saw friend was... Yeah.
So your friend's into 2JZ
So
Motors.
he was looking at this, and so I started talking to him, and I've known
back
this
in
guy.
2014, which, by the way, for you was high school.
Yeah, I was high school.
For me, was last week.
Yeah. But he was looking at these engines, and keep in mind, I've known this guy for 2.5 years, 3 years. Most of the kids at Strake, they weren't into cars. I was always like a misfit at Strake. I never really fit in. I was just, because even at Strake, I grew up in...
So you graduated in 2015?
Yeah.
That's when I started Euroworld officially.
A lot of things happened in the car world in 2015 that, unbeknownst to me, so...
So you graduated from high school...
You started Euroworld.
But I mean, like you said, a lot of things happened in 2015.
Yeah, in the car world, yeah.
It's like they were waiting for you to graduate.
Maybe. But yeah, but I always felt like a misfit there. So I never really talked about things that I was interested in. But I saw he was looking at these engines. So we started just talking cars. And then I was like, we should totally make an automotive club. And so...
But let's go back to that for a second, because I think you've touched on a point that's really important. You felt like a misfit in high school because of car guy.
It wasn't just because of a car guy. I mean, there were probably 3 or 4 other variables.
Well, the reason I pointed out is because you're not the only one.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt very much the same way in high school. I was a total car nerd. And at a time there wasn't a handful of us in the entire town. If you weren't a domestic guy building drag race cars, what are you into? They didn't understand the European sports car concept back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have an internet. We had magazines, and that was it. And so, but even in 2015, with the advent of the internet being around for some time, and the technology being what it was, even at that level, in 2015, in high school, you still felt a bit of a misfit.
Oh, yeah. In
a private school in a town covered up in exotic cars.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I felt like, if, there were kids at Strake where it's just like, their dad at the time, they had a 458 or whatever, but it's like, they had that for the status, not for
the carness.
Not because it's like an NAV8 and it's like this, they did all these enhancements that were like jumps from the 430. So, again, just cars were meant, there was a different meaning there. So when I saw him looking up 2Js, I'm like,
you're only looking, car guy, yeah.
Yeah, that's a car guy right there. You're looking that up for a reason. So, so I just started talking to him in this class, totally again blowing off English and or whatever the class we were in. And
you're saying we'd rather look at cars than pretty much anything else.
Exactly. So I was just like, we should start an automotive club. It's our senior year. Me and you both have something we're interested in. And, in my head, I was like, we're going to build cars, we're going to do all this. But it's like, unbeknownst to me, it takes a lot of money to do that. But we ended up buying a Mark III Supra. Mm-hmm. Total piece of shit. I mean, it was like $1,500. It ran, and it was, it was a stick, and it was fun. We got to do some things on it, but I don't know, I think we changed the oil, we changed the starter, we changed a few things. But
real basic types
of stuff,
But I think, you felt like a mechanic when you were done.
Oh yeah. Because I think at one point, I forget, we did one thing where we dropped the front suspension, and it was pretty crazy. Yeah, I look back and I'm like, I could have killed myself doing that. Because we had a couple of floor jacks, and it was just the
sketchiest work environment.
Yeah, it was really sketchy, and just had a few impact tools. Wasn't worrying about torquing things down correctly. So, I look back on that, and it's just like, oof. But
Yet
but
here
you know,
are.
by the middle of that, you know, I would say, you know, we had kind of like weekly meetings, just like talk about cars, what was going on. But you know, I had scheduled a trip to Hennessy, I think in November of 2014, just for us to go out there and look at the facility, and also I had scheduled a trip to Ferrari of Houston to like for them to give us a tour of like the back. So those two are really cool. But you know, in December is like around, I was like, okay, we should go to like a coffee and cars. And because my mom was like, hey, one of my friends gets these emails about there's a coffee and cars Houston. I didn't know at the time.
Oh.
So yeah, believe it or not, I didn't know that there was a coffee and cars.
I've been going to cars and coffees for 5 years at that point.
Yeah, so I didn't know, but my mom had forwarded me an email that one of her friends was on the mailing list for. And so I was like, let's go. This was still at Vintage. This is whenever it was still at Vintage. Yeah, so we went to Vintage.
Well, the crazy part about that is the Cars and Coffee here in Houston, for those of you who don't know, it's the largest one in the country. It's pretty big. Bar none.
It's pretty big.
And even the largest Cars and Coffee in the country, where they regularly have 1,100 plus cars show up for it.
Yeah.
In 2015, it had been going on for years at that point.
Had it?
Yeah. I've been going since 2008, 2009.
See, that's the history I don't know about.
Yeah. And what's so funny about it is, even by 2015, a member of the car club in high school had no clue such a thing existed.
Yeah, no idea.
Which is mind-blowing to me, because Houston's such a big city. I mean, 9 million people these days.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it was out in Tomball, so it's just like, is this even considered Houston type of deal? Because but what was really cool, what I liked about it, you know, the first one I went to was, you know, I lived in Sugar Land at the time, so I had to get on Beltway 8 and everything. Okay, so but what was cool about that is like the whole part of the experience about that I don't get to experience anymore with running the shows, but driving there and then running into other enthusiasts on Beltway 8, that's the whole part of the experience.
That's true.
Like,
that's true.
It was very cool. So, you know, I wish that I could experience that in my own events, but I don't. But I'm sure other people still do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Every time I've been to your events, I hook up with a couple of guys that I didn't know that guy, but I love his car, and I think I know where he's going.
But it was cool. So it was really cool seeing at Vintage just all the different makes and models that were there. There was I remember there were a lot of Lamborghinis, and there was even a white LFA. So I don't know.
I remember that car. I
don't know who. It's obviously not in town anymore, and if it is, at least it's like it's in a warehouse.
You've seen it though.
But then, and then after that in January, I went to Supercar Saturday. So that was whenever, you know, now that's my venue over at, you know, West Ave, but that's when Sophia ran it. And so whenever I went there, that was a different vibe for me, because I was like, I think it was like there were 4 Diablos, there were 3 Mercies, I mean, it was a lot of Lambos. The Lambo Club was in full force there, and there were Ferraris, there were Porsches. Again, Saphir had filled that up with like all supercars, and he had a time. I think he had his yellow Murcielago. So what I'd realized then, you know, in talking to them, because I got to speak to a few of them, you know, in my mind, in my head, all the people that had these supercars were like, you know, high execs at Shell but what I came to find out is a lot of these were small business owners. And that, I mean, probably if there were 70 of them there, 50 of them were small business owners. And it really kind of blew my mind. It's just like, okay, so
I don't have to be a college graduate, work for a major corporation to make this kind of money?
I realized 2 things. It was just like, I realized 1, that, I don't have to have a college degree. And 2, it's just like, if I can affiliate myself with these people, maybe I can get a job with them whenever I get out of school. And
or better yet,
work with them. So, but I didn't even think that far then at the time. But I was like, okay, how do I affiliate myself? And I had recently picked up a passion for photography, as almost any car nut does for a little bit. But I took a picture of this guy's 599 GTB, and he came up to me. He was like, hey, can you send me those? And I'm like, sure. He was like, here's my card. And it was he owned a collision shop. I haven't seen him since, you know, but whenever I got his car, I was like, crap, okay, this is how I can do it, you know. So I just started teaching myself more and more photography on YouTube. And
I didn't realize that's how you got started. Because
that's how I got started.
When I saw you, I thought you'd been doing it for a couple of years or something at that point.
No, well, I mean, whenever you met me, I think it was in 2016. So I'd been doing it for about a year. But I realized very early on.
So young.
Yeah, but I realized very early on, okay, so it was January at this time. And I was like, okay, I do like this photography thing. I got to get better at it. And then I'm just going to start collecting data, start making a list for what? I don't know. The car show wasn't even a thought at the time.
Okay.
It was just, I was just building a list of like, I don't know, people that I could do shoots for. It's just anything for. Maybe I go sweep their floors, or maybe I just go do, who knows what I do with them.
Now that's something that I want to talk about more on our show is that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Because as much as we love cars, the very cruel reality is it takes money to do cars or have a car.
Totally.
And because of the exotic nature of these cars and high performance, like you said, the vast majority of the people who have the means to have such a car are typically a small business owner. They are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit I recognized in you when I met you. And part of the fun of having you here is telling your story about, didn't even know what he's doing or how he's going to do it.
Just doing it, though.
Just get out there, go for it.
One problem at a time. So I think after that, Supercar Saturday was the eye opener for me. Coffee and Cars was just like, Coffee and Cars was the eye opener. Was like, whoa, Houston has a scene.
A big one.
And then Supercar Saturday was like, whoa, you need to affiliate somehow, some way. Talk to these guys, whether you're learning from them, whether you become best friends with them, just be a sponge, So I started it. So me and the club, I think, the club started in September at like 30 members. And then by February, it had narrowed down to like 8. Because, it was just a weed out of like, okay, who's really here for, because I think a lot of the expectation was like, we were going to like build cars and stuff. And it's like, again, bubble, like people don't really, kids, you don't really realize what all goes into it.
Right.
But, the next 2 or 3 months go by, we'd gone to like maybe 2, 3 more events. But of the 7 or 8 people that were involved, we were having a blast. And
the real car guys were having a great time.
Yeah. And then I think February 1st or March 1st, one of those days, that's when I started an Instagram page called The Car Culture. And that was my freelance photography page. And it was just so I could start, following people and seeing who was in the scene. Because I realized through... some of the photographers that are still around, whether it be Ali, Brian Nguyen, Alex Brogan, some of those guys, they had a page and they had built up a following, but often not they would tag owners. And I didn't realize like, man, owners have Instagrams, like, and so I was just like, okay, cool. So I got on that. But then April rolls around and the school is like, okay, you need to do a service project. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you got to do something. And so we were going to blow it off. I was like, let's, we can do a car wash or something in the parking lot, or, who knows? It was something I was going to blow off. But one of my members in the morning, it was like early April. He heard this family, he heard on 104, there was this family that called in. And they were telling their story about how, there was a family of 6 and they had moved here from Ohio, and I believe it was two of the kids had disabilities. And one of the kids' names was Adam, and Adam had spinal bifida, and I believe it was he also had a form of autism, but spinal bifida, if I remember correctly, is whenever your limbs don't go proportionate to everything just doesn't go proportionate. So you need a special wheelchair. So all of that, of course, costs money.
Yeah.
But they moved here from Ohio. They drove here in a van, and the night that they got here, they had moved like in an apartment up in Humble, and they unloaded the kids from the van, and they came back. The van was gone. So medical equipment, wheelchair, everything was gone. So they told my friend heard about this on 104, told me the story. So like I skip homeroom. I give them a call because he had gotten the number, and I said, my name's Anthony. I want to host, I want to do something for you. And, I guess something that I also left out, one of the car shows that we had went to, I think in like late February or early March, was the Corvette show that happened in Sugarland. So that was in my neck of the woods. It happened on Town Center. And so I think, I was with me and my friends we went to go get lunch on a Saturday, and in Town Center, there was like 100 Corvettes on the plaza. And so wow. I'm like, okay, I mean, it looked like shit, but it was like, okay, I could, that means that there's a way to do it. And so I started putting things together whenever I heard this, whenever my friend was telling me about it. And I'm like, I'm going to host a car show for them. I'm going to have it benefit. I've got a list of 40 people now that I could call that I think could move some things in the Houston scene to make it be really cool.
And I'm sure you were surprised probably how willing these people are to help.
Yeah, I was. And I think what really sold it was, you take charities like the Red Cross or even like if you take like the Houston Food Bank, something local, it's always hard to see where your money goes or the result.
Because it's a large organization.
Yes, exactly.
They have tremendous administrative overhead. Mm-hmm. And as a result,
you don't see where it goes.
a small portion of the money you give them only goes
like
to
20% or 30%.
It's a small
I don't know the
number.
exact number. Don't quote me on that. But it's like I know
you're
it's a
right,
small
though. It's a very small variance to what you have.
It's pennies on a dollar.
Whereas if you donate to someone directly or
exactly.
a local event,
so I think that's what was really different about this event. And it's like, while I certainly don't wish anything like that on anybody, I wish I could find more people like that, because it was a very unique use case, and it was and again, a lot of the community came out to support that, which was really cool. So I called them. I told them that, you know, I want to meet you, and they're like, okay, well, great. I was like, after school, and they were like, what? And I was like,
school?
I was like, just after school. I'm a senior in high school. Okay, come after school. So like I came at like after 3 p.m. and yeah, they were like the nicest family ever. And you know, Adam was 10 years old, and I've got a picture of Adam and my brother in their apartment. It's on the website right now. It's like on the About Us tab. But Adam looks like he's like 4 years old, but he's really 10. And so it was really like after I met with them, I was like, we got to do something. And so I looked all over Sugarland's website, and I finally found somebody that I could email and talk to. And so I told them what I wanted to do, the charity and everything. They were like, okay, cool. It'll be $2,000. And I'm like, what? $2,000?
I've got to spend money to do a charity event?
Yeah, exactly. So I thought they'd be willing to work with me on it. Or I just didn't even know that they charged.
Yeah.
And for something like that, because I was just like, I'm bringing people to the plaza. Like, you know, this would be a good people. But I was like,
these people are going to spend money in the plaza.
Yeah, but
why am I having?
They don't care. Don't give a shit.
Okay.
So I was like, okay,
government in action.
So I was like, okay, well, it's all right. Let me just think about this. And so next day I go to the school. I tell them about the charity, and they're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I tell them about what I want to do and the price, and they're like, oh yeah, no, it's too much liability. We don't want anything to do with it. And so I was like, here's what's gonna happen. Yeah, I'm going to do this anyways. It's going to count for credit, and I don't want to see this anywhere in the yearbook. I don't want to see it. It's not, Drake is not involved at all. Only thing, I just get credit for it. And they were like, yeah, whatever. They blew it off, because I was never, in my mind, what I think it was is I was never a fundraiser kid. I was never a good student. So on paper, I didn't show any of the qualities of a
community leader.
Yes, I didn't show any of the qualities of what, you know,
because that's effectively what you're doing. That's community leadership.
So, but I told them, like, piss off. I'm going to do this anyways, and I don't want to see it anywhere. And they were like, fine, whatever. And so,
but if you do it, I want my credit for it.
So I leave there. I mean, I think I had one other person with me. I forget.
And I bet you're probably a little hot under the collar after.
Yeah, but I was just like, how do we do this?
Yeah.
And so,
so you didn't waste any time being mad at them. You were focusing on.
Well, all the energy. I was just like, prove them wrong.
Exactly.
Prove them wrong. And so, so I got 3 sponsors, and of those sponsors, you know, I found they were all in the scene, and one of them, was an insurance agent that I've been working with, because in high school, I'd gotten my I'd gotten my PNC license, and so I was selling insurance in high school. You know, because you can get that at age 15.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got it at 16, but you know, I'd been doing it for like a year or two at the time.
Wow.
So so I told the franchisee owner, the Allstate owner, I was like, this is what I want to do, and they were like, okay, like how much? And so it was that one and 2 collision shops, Elite Collision and Imperial Collision, as you know, Butch. So those 3, you know, we were able to get the $2,000 and pull it off. And so keep in mind, the GoFundMe, the goal was $5,000. And I hate to backtrack again, but we had also, one of my other team members had also emailed like KPRC, emailed Good Morning America, not Good Morning America, but Deborah Duncan, and we were able to get the story on KPRC. So nice. People had heard about it then. The video is still somewhere, but they had heard about it. So people, you know, once that story went on, you know, on the news, they also posted it to their Facebook, and so all the moms like started sharing it. And all my friends started sharing it. So that really helped as well.
Explosion.
Yeah, there was that exposure. And I think, so the event was set to be, I think it was like May 9th or May 8th. It was one of those days of 2015. And the story had gone out, I think it was like May 4th. So we had like 4 or 5 days of like.
I was still moving into the shop in May of 2015.
No kidding.
Yeah.
We're Post Oak or, yeah. And so it goes out. So I've got 33 cars confirmed, one of which is a 918. So that was like really cool. And it's what's unfortunate is I don't know if that owner moved away, but I haven't seen him since.
For those of you, again, a little reference to those who's not as knowledgeable. He's referring to a Porsche 918.
One of the three hypercars in the world. And I don't really know what you can, like, one of my friends, you remember Adam Braybeck? So me and him were arguing like last week. He was like, what makes a hypercar? And I was just like, money, speed, and it's got to be a hybrid. I don't know. And
we were having the same conversation in the 80s when they coined the term supercar.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, what's a supercar? Well, my hot rodded Camaro meets those requirements.
No, it's got to do. I feel like for it to be a supercar, it's got to be capable of doing 200, almost 200.
Well, a supercar back then was a car that could do 180.
I feel like that's.
What's so funny about it was none of the claimed supercars of the era could do 180.
Yeah.
But they were supercars, and so it wasn't a clear definition. It was just a term used as a magazine to supercar to throw on a headline to sell magazines. Didn't have to be true. It just had to create the excitement.
Yeah.
And then in the 2000s, we've run out of, because they're basically a mildly modified minivan meets the performance requirements of a supercar.
Throw a 2J in a minivan, yeah.
And you're going to
do 180.
You're going to hurt Countach's feelings for that.
Yeah.
And so then we had to come up with something better. Ooh,
the Countach is a hilarious one for me. It's one of my dream cars.
Yeah.
It looks
and if you've ever ridden in one.
It looks like a Batmobile.
Yeah.
But like it barely does 140. Like I mean, it struggles to get up to the 130.
They claimed 180. The fastest anybody actually ever saw one go was 165.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough.
Yeah, and Jay Leno will tell you, it might do 165, but you better be falling off a cliff and pointing downward.
Yeah. I mean, the wing created a lot of drag.
You had to take the wing. You had to take the wing off to do 165.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it with the wing on.
But it looked cool.
Oh, it's the coolest looking thing ever.
So, so I still run into the okay, what is considered a hypercar? And it's, I don't know, I don't know if it's just because the guys at Top Gear coined. I mean, it was like McLaren, Ferrari, Porsche all came out with these three hybrids, and all of them are, I don't know what the top. I think the top speed. None of them. It's ridiculous.
Well,
it's
the
like
big deal
220.
being, supercar was for anything that could do 180 and be European and cool looking.
Yeah,
but when the hypercar term came out, the big deal for the Porsche 918 wasn't, they didn't even talk about top speed. The big deal about the Porsche 918 was it was the first production car that could break 7 minutes.
At the Nürburgring. Yeah.
And do you know why 7 minutes is such a big deal there?
No.
Why 7 minutes?
I mean, it's fast. But why?
It's very fast. 7 minutes was the record to break in 1976, when Niki Lauda broke it in qualifying for the last time they had Formula One at the Nürburgring.
Oh.
And that's the place where Niki Lauda crashed that they made the movie Rush about.
Right.
But the big deal was that was a Formula One record in 1976 being 7 minutes.
Gotcha. Okay.
So imagine.
And then all three cars ended up breaking that record. Well, I don't know. Did they ever put the LaFerrari on the... I know Ferrari's very particular about what track they go on. But I know it's capable.
Yeah, they all are. I mean, and then, Lamborghini comes out with car after car after car, all just going faster and faster and faster for a lot less than $1 million.
A lot less. Well, yeah, I was gonna say the SF90 beat the LaFerrari, but I still think the SF90 is $1 million car too, because that's a. So, but that's where the argument gets interesting, because the SF90 is, I mean, what, some of them are selling over $1 million, and it's a hybrid. It's got almost 1,000 horsepower. It's faster than LaFerrari. Is that considered a hypercar? And it's like, I don't know, because I think the real first hypercar, if we're gonna go off of. If we disregard the electric side, I consider the McLaren F1 a hypercar. I mean, that car did 240 in what was it, 2000 or when it was the
late 90s.
It held the record for 20 years or something ridiculous that. So
that car was exciting because it was the first car that was over $500,000 brand new. And now if you can get one, if someone will sell it to you, you can expect it to be north of $20 million.
At least.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. We got off track though, so
these are important discussions. But they are kind of marketing terms with no clear definitions.
Yeah.
So for someone to argue over it, it's like, well, how much air is air?
But I think what I ended up agreeing on with Adam and my brother was like, okay, there is a money aspect involved. Like it does have to cost a certain amount. Why? I don't know. But it's like I wouldn't consider $100,000 car that could do, even if it did 260 and was like a high, like I feel like there's not enough prestige and heritage built behind it. And I don't know why that's even a variable, but I feel like it has to be. It's weird.
For example, my Huracan, not even my Huracan, which I've sold, don't even have it, my Gallardo.
Supercar.
Even though it's over 1,000 horsepower, and it's limited through gear ratios to a 255 mile an hour top speed, and it will do it.
Yeah.
I spent a lot less than $1 million on it.
Yeah.
A lot less than $500,000 on it.
See, like I don't know why in my head I consider that a supercar and not a hypercar. I don't know why. I don't know what's the.
My Gallardo will go destroy these hypercars.
Yeah,
with ease. But it's not exotic enough because of not enough carbon fiber, not enough Lamborghini, not enough orange, not enough fire, not enough, Not that I care. I bought it because I enjoy driving it.
Yeah.
Even though it's considered an outdated car, it's old, it's chunky and not as cool and whatever.
Not super cool.
I like it.
It's very cool.
And I don't drive it often enough, but I do have to drive it because the tires are race tires. They have to be driven on or they'll rot.
Yep.
You can't let the car sit. You got to keep the oil changed every 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
And then of course it requires maintenance. It probably has a per mile operational expense equal to that of a small aircraft. But I
bet it's fun.
I enjoy the living snot out of it. It's the greatest car in the world to me. I don't care what other people think.
And it's stick like that. You got a stick Lamborghini that's like twin turboed. Yeah, that's a rare setup you got there. But this 918.
But it's not a hypercar.
Yeah, whatever. Again, I don't know why.
Haven't I taken you for a ride in that car?
No,
I haven't.
You haven't.
I feel bad now because I really thought
we gotta go for a ride now.
Yeah, absolutely.
We gotta do it soon. But this 918 rolls in, and he had heard about it from a friend that of the 30 people that I told.
When that car rolled in, your world stopped.
Oh yeah, when it rolled in, I'm like, oh my god, first meet, I got a 918. I'm like, what the hell? So
top of the world,
I've got it's my first picture that I have in my phone. It's still because I've deleted a lot of pictures of my phones or whatever, but I've always kept that one. So that's like the furthest dated back picture that I have in my phone currently is that picture in 2015 of like the
massive plus
overhead shot.
And you're held at this point?
Yeah, I had just turned 19.
19 years old, first car show, you pull a 918.
Yeah, 918. Yeah, it was very cool. And then Butch had his Squadra Corsa. And
I would wear a crown and a cape after pulling that off.
Well, what's really cool is I didn't care more. I cared about more. It's like, what can we do for Adam?
Of course.
And so Adam, again, the goal was $5,000. We raised $2,400 cash. I think it was a little over $13,000 on the GoFundMe. And then a Chevy dealership found out about it from the KPRC thing, and they donated a van. So they got their wheelchair and much, much more. And so after that, it was like, we really just changed someone's life. How can we keep doing this?
Dramatically change someone's life.
Yeah. So how can we keep doing this? And
choose the next person, change their life.
So unfortunately, what I don't think we haven't been able to find another charity like that since.
Well, that's not a charity. That's a person.
We haven't been able to find another person like that since. Yeah. And while I hope.
And what's so sad about it is the stories are out there. It's just a matter of finding them.
And it's a matter of finding them. And it's I don't know, it's hard to find. That one kind of just like, it fell in our lap. Man, my friend just had me listen to 104. They got on we found that one just by luck. If you hadn't had the radio on, we would have never known.
I mean, how many karma points do you think you gained on that one?
I don't know. I think that, that I'm still here today hosting events. I think that I'm still here today hosting events. I think that's, still playing towards that.
Yeah.
We definitely still try to do charity events. We do a lot with the Houston Food Bank. We do a lot with Texas Children's. But it would be fun to work with, individuals from time to time because that's, I don't know, it's a lot more heartfelt that way.
Well, of course, there's, the money wasted on administrative expense.
Yeah.
A lot lower.
Yeah. So
that money went to someone and changed their life.
So, I mean, whenever we do the food drives and the toy drives, that's why it's always like, I always urge people to nope, bring the food, bring the toys. Because it's like, you can't liquidate that.
No, exactly.
So, but yeah, ever since then, that was 2015. So since then.
7 years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy to think. It's crazy to think 7 years now.
Wait, so that makes you 26?
I'll be 26 in May.
You, my youngest son, and Alec Adele. You guys are the same age.
Alex 26?
Yeah.
Dang. Didn't know that.
It seems like he'd be much older because European champion.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you and him are the same age.
Very cool. Very cool.
He was my first podcast guest.
Yeah, I know. I saw him last week. I saw him. Super cool.
Yeah. But no, everybody on here is because they've got a great story. They've done something special. And what you've accomplished with car culture, I consider very special.
Appreciate that.
Because I remember when I first sponsored it wasn't your first event. What was that?
It was in 2017.
Oh, so it was you've been doing it for 2 years when I sponsored?
Yeah, 2 years.
So I'm late to the table.
Yeah.
But I'm still proud to have been a part of it.
We were going to do something, and then I think what you started planning the charity, that Race Armada event. And then it was like, so it's like you had to push back 4 or 5 months. And so then it was like, okay, we're going to go into February. So I think January, February of like 2016.
It was cold. I remember being cold that day.
Yeah, it was cold. So it was a little further on. But yeah, 2 years in.
Wow. So I've known you for, that was 2017, so
yeah.
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years now. It's crazy, right?
I feel like I just met you.
I know, right? It feels like it's been like really recent. It feels like it's been like a year or something like that.
How many events? I mean, geez, between and videos and all the things you filmed, and
so I think after that, I started doing some filming and stuff for various. I started doing some filming stuff for Your Motorsports, and video and all that came into play because I realized early on with car culture, it's like it's got to look dope. So that's everything from how I present it.
By dope, he's not referring to drugs.
No drugs. I'm referring to the event. It's got to look really cool.
I didn't know people use the word dope anymore.
I do. I don't know. I still
Justin,
use that.
quit laughing.
So I knew the events had looked dope. So I knew it and I mean that like in person and on socials.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't have anybody that could. I couldn't afford a videographer. So
well, hold on. Let me interrupt you just a little bit here and dig into what aspect of what you're talking about. Social media has become so important in all our marketing aspects these days.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize social media was where you needed to focus your efforts?
First event.
Really?
First event, yeah. I knew then.
Really? Mm-hmm. How did that happen? What happened there that...
So I think what happened was even a little before... It was just a way of, okay, I can only tell somebody so much. How can they find out more about me? And it's like where the next place that you point them is almost as crucial as a first impression. So whenever they look at it, that's social currency. That's verifying if you're all talk or you're not. And again, I know you can fake a lot on social media, but if you've got years of posts to back it up, if you've got the following there and you've got the engagement that matches the following, it's like you can quickly kind of weed out what's a real page, what's not. And then even outside of that, I knew
like
it was
people see the cars I've built and worked on.
But I knew outside of that, building a community around this, that's the whole other part of the social media aspect. That's connecting them outside of the event.
Right.
So
that's why it's more than just a car meet.
Exactly.
That's why it's more than just a social media post.
Yeah.
You are here to present the culture of the automobile.
Yeah.
In its entirety, as much as you can.
As much as I can, yeah.
Because once you started digging into it, I think, did you realize it was going to be as large as it turned out to be?
No. And even then,
at what point did you feel overwhelmed by what you were trying to take on?
Recently, actually. Because after that first event, I think there was a 2 or 3 year period where we did maybe 1-2 events in a year. Because it became, it was harder to find sponsors, and it was like I didn't know how to find new venues, and I didn't know how to, do any of that, and it was just like Sugarland's kind of it. But that was, and again at the time, I was still in college and everything, and so I was very much so, I would say, immature about it. Even I was like I didn't know.
See, I was impressed by your gumption. I'm like, you know what, I'd like to direct him more, but. You know what? He's got to go bang on a few doors. He's going to get rejected. He has to kind of get guided by the process rather than anybody trying to teach him. Yeah. Because, that's the best teacher.
And ultimately, it is the best teacher. And ultimately, that's what happened. I would say for 2016, 2017, and 2018 was a lot of rejections. I think actually in 2017, that's whenever I got West Ave. So that's whenever got the Tootsie's venue, and then they were bought out, and so we couldn't do anything with them for a year and a half.
Wow.
But it's like they were like, just keep following up.
And that West Avenue was a great location.
We're having my next show is there. It's on what is it? It's on April 23rd.
Oh, so you were able to do it.
Oh yeah, no. We still have events there. Yeah, we definitely still do. But we had to go through, even whenever they got new management and everything, I had to go to two different property managers that were, a headache to deal with. I feel like they didn't really, either they didn't like me or they had so much. I give them the benefit of the doubt. I think they had so much on their plate because they came into this new, it was probably a new role, and it was a whole new location, a whole new venue for them too.
So they weren't exactly receptive to the idea of piling.
I don't even think it was they were receptive. I think that they just had so much other shit going on that it was like a car show. Like what? We've got to worry.
So far down the list,
and then we've got to worry about the politics of the new partnership that we just formed with this company. And so there was so many moving parts that they were having to worry about. I think that's more of what it was with the
that very
two
much
property
happens
managers.
when you have new buyers. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were trying to navigate all of the politics and the tranches of, just being bought out and
That's
everything.
a job I wouldn't want.
Yeah. And, and whenever I saw them again, they weren't nice, but they weren't mean. It wasn't directed at me. I could tell
At least they weren't mean this time.
I could tell that they had a lot going on in their life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what had happened. So I think I had one event. We had two events with them in 2017 that were really cool. And then I think we had one or two max in like 2018 or 2019. It was very hard to get something consistent, and that's why I struggled with.
I remember those
a long
times,
time
yeah.
at Car Culture, yeah. And so, but I feel like a lot of it also, if you look at almost everybody, the original 8, all of them, half of them turned out to be, half of them just turned out to go away to college, and the other half turned out to, we just didn't have the same interest.
Gotcha.
And so then it was just like, now I'm more alone in this. And it's like, I think there was a lot. I think one of the really cool things about Car Culture is it was something that me and the original, 7 or 8, it was something that we all belonged to.
Right.
And that was really cool. And there was a lot of camaraderie there. It felt like it was something that we belonged to. And
you created your own.
Yeah, exactly. We created something. And then once half of them moved away and the other half just had different interests, it was like,
of course, you're doing in that age group where life is so transitional.
Yes, it was very much so transitional, where it's like you go from having no problems to having real problems and real responsibilities, and you either recognize that in your friends as like, okay, this is part of life, or you get defensive and immature about it, and it's just like, oh no, it's just you don't want to hang, and it's just so. Again, and there were people like that.
And how long did it take you to learn that?
Pretty quickly, actually.
Okay.
Because I looked at it in my own life, and there were definitely people that I wanted to see, even like it was just people that were in my old high school, and it was like I couldn't find the time, or it was like I had just gotten a job, and I was like. And then it was like, okay, of the time that it is free, do I devote it to Car Culture? I devote it to maintaining, maintaining relationships. So that was all in like 2020, or that was all like whenever I was like 22, 23. And now it's like, I feel like now, as I'm about to turn 26, it's like, it's just a part of life now that I realize it's just a part of life. But Car Culture caught its real break.
Wait till you get married and have children.
But I feel like Car Culture caught its real break, I think, shortly after COVID. Okay. Because you would think it, yeah.
Because I saw it as a thriving thing before COVID.
It may have been, and that just may have been because I was so good at posting.
I didn't feel like it.
I didn't really feel like it. But after, once COVID hit, obviously, I'd had 2 or 3 events lined up. We had to cancel them. But around August of 2020, everybody was so pent up from being inside and everything. I had just landed.
I even had a little event, and I couldn't believe the explosion of people that showed up at it.
So I had just landed Pearland in 2020, and August was our first time having that event there. And so then we went back to back. So then not only did I land Pearland at the time, a month later I landed Katy. Oh. And then I still had to come back to that event with West Ave. So I had 3 venues all of a sudden lined up that it was like, and then I was just like, I'm going to push myself. So I pushed myself to do, I think it was 8 events from August to December.
I remember that. I remember thinking,
it was
That's insane.
It was, but
I remember you telling me that, and I just thought, you've lost your mind.
Yeah, but in that, there was so much growth. That's whenever car culture kind of hit, because it was so consistent. And again, this was at a time where there wasn't much going on. Coffee and Cars had been booted from Memorial.
That's right.
There wasn't any other rallies that were going on. It was just me. And I think there was
for a while you were the only car show
for a while.
in town.
In 2020, I think towards the end of 2020, it was only me.
Now, for those of you not from Houston, when you have the single largest cars and coffee in the country, to have that suddenly just go away.
Yeah.
And you being technically a second tier show, but even as a fan of what you did, it was hard to think of what you did as second tier, because even though it didn't have the massive showing and the massive number of cars.
Well, that's the thing. I don't want that.
Yeah, because what you have is so high quality.
Yeah, that's the thing. So like I enjoy, like I'd say on the smaller end, there's Sugarland. I can only fit 58 cars on Plaza. Okay, that's it. And then the rest is relying on the strip.
Yep.
And then there's parking in the garage. On the larger end, there's La Centera, where I can fit 119 cars. And again, there's a parking garage, whatever. But
you see how he has his numbers squared away?
Yeah, because like I like to organize all the spots. I have everybody register, and it's so that because I know that I'm a limited size venue, I want to make sure like if I tell you that I have a spot for you, I have a spot for you. I don't want to. Exactly. I
can park there. I see that opening.
And granted, I will do, like, if it's like, let's say like an event starts at like 8 a.m. and it's like 8:45, somebody hasn't shown up. Yeah, I'm filling the spot. But, like in January at La Centera, I had over 400 people register for that event, 119 spots. So it's like, I want to make sure at over 400 people register, sign up. Not show up, register. I think I had 4,000 or 5,000 people there. That was probably the biggest show that I've had. And it was huge.
4,000.
Yeah, people. I mean, it was a huge event.
4,000 people coming out for a car show.
Yeah, it was huge. La Centera is a beast.
Beast.
Yeah.
I love the keywords you're using. I'm just hashtag.
And that's partly why I like doing them in so many different areas, because you get to see so many different cars. You get to see so many different people.
Yeah. Because I was brainstorming in my head while we're talking, there's a large parking lot near my house. But now that I've thought about it, there's no way that number of cars would begin to fit there.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, that's my caveat with parking lots is like, it's hard to make it look dope. It's hard to make it look cool on socials and everything. And like, unless you can like block off an area and have like a dedicated arena for like drifting or something, then it's like, then you're doing something creative. But if you just have a parking lot, it's like, are we shopping? Like,
it's actually a parking lot behind a movie theater.
Yeah, so then it turns in, and then like if it's not well organized, then it turns into like a takeover type of deal. And then before you know it, like if it's not organized, if it's not meant for drifting, you have a bunch of assholes that are just drifting there, and then then you get blamed for it.
Oh yeah,
and so
you're the
and then what if somebody gets hit, and then it's just like
liability.
Yeah,
what's your policy?
Well, even outside of liability, like forget the legal stuff. Like somebody just got hit on your conscience, like that was your event, and like even though like they're acting a fool, like it's like that's their decision. It's like, in my mind, it's like I'm just as much responsible. So
because you can kick out, you have the right to refuse.
Yeah, and it's just like I played a role in like helping somebody get hurt. It's like nice. So that doesn't feel well.
No, you don't. Nobody wants.
So that's, and again that's in. I feel like it's hard to do that. When you have a much bigger space, it's definitely doable. But I like the intimacy of my events just because they're smaller. I can, it's easier to control.
Yep.
But that's just me.
It's okay. That's there's nothing to justify, sir. you, like I said, I believe you have a great story. I have a lot to be proud of, and that's the story that needs to be told here.
Yeah,
the car culture, 4,000 people.
Yeah, but what's crazy about Houston is so big where coffee and cars can be going on, up north. Another event can be going on down south, and we could all still be full. And that's what I love about Houston, because like I get that comment sometimes about how it's like, oh man, y'all are having the event the same day. Like, is that gonna hurt you? And it's just like no, it's not, and two, I encourage it. Like, I love seeing other car events going on in Houston, because I would hate to have the inverse problem. I'd hate to have the problem where there are no car events in Houston, where there's not a car scene. Like, that would suck to live in a city where there's not a car scene. Like, so I love seeing any other events that pop up. I love seeing them, as long as they're, as long as they're not doing donuts and JCPenney, like, I'm all for it.
Well, like even like the Porsche Club, for example. Okay.
Yeah, they do a lot.
They have an event, a gathering every weekend somewhere in Houston. Mm-hmm. What makes me laugh is there's out of the 5 they have, I only go to one of them, and only because it's in my backyard. Yeah. And when I go,
there's one in Katy. There's one in what is it, in the Heights area. Yeah. There's one in down south. So there's one in like League City. Like that's so cool. That there's.
What makes me laugh about it is when I go to the one in the Woodlands. There's only like half a dozen people who are not from the Woodlands going to the Woodlands Car Show because we're lazy. We don't want to drive all the way across Houston to be in a car show. And I laugh because they could really have these at the same time.
Yeah.
And it would not affect each. Yep. And it makes me laugh because like in the Porsche Club, it's the Lone Star region, which is all of Houston.
Yeah. But Houston's huge.
Exactly. The region's so huge, we're technically 5 subregions.
Yeah, really. I mean, you probably have like 2,000-3,000 Porsches in that group, like easy, like. Yeah, up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know the number, but I imagine.
But I mean, there's the number of people who are in the club.
Yeah.
Those who show up.
Yeah, I imagine there's like a dedicated 100, 200.
Yeah, but even then, you're talking a couple hundred people the same make car that will just show up at every car show,
and that's ridiculous. Yeah. Like if you think about that number. Yeah.
There's the Lotus guys, BMW guys, Lamborghini guys.
So that's what I mean. That's what I love about Houston. And so
JDM, the Supras, you name it.
So like anytime, and that's something else that's like,
and we haven't even talked about the Mustangs, the Camaros, the Corvettes.
Yeah.
How domestic you want to get, the classics, the pre-war, the post-war.
There is a huge like domestic following here too.
Yeah, you're talking literally 1 million.
But that's what's so cool about Houston. I love that.
That's one of the reasons I love being here.
Yeah.
If you're a car guy, you don't have to live in Southern California. There's a whole lot happening right here in Houston.
Whole lot, for sure.
Yeah. Here's one for you.
Yeah.
Lamborghini of Houston, which is effectively in the Woodlands, is regularly the #1 new car dealership for Lamborghini in the country.
Porsche North, too, I think is the second largest in the country.
At Lamborghini of Houston, there's only one other dealership that ever challenged them for the #1 spot.
Ooh. Is it Newport?
Lamborghini of Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills. Yeah.
In case you're wondering how much money is here in the Woodlands.
Yeah.
The only challenge to the Woodlands is Beverly Hills, and only once in a while, not consistently.
Yeah.
There's money here, people.
A lot of it.
I'm seeing the clock.
Yeah. I gotta get running.
But you see how this could just go on.
Yeah, I don't know. Easily. It's 50 minutes, went by like.
Yeah. That. So would you be willing to come back and talk some more another time?
Absolutely.
Well, that's the whole thing. Is like I really want to make sure my guests really enjoy being here, and
totally.
And because because what we do is not simple. What we do is not superficial. There's a lot to it, and a lot worth talking about.
Totally. There's so much more that I could go into, about the events and everything, and
I feel like we just scratched the surface.
We only scratched the surface on it because even I touched a bit on doing burnouts at JCPenney. There's a part. No, but listen, there's a part of me.
That's a story I want to go into.
There's a part of me that really wants that, which is something I bet you didn't see coming. But there's what I always say is there's a time and place for everything.
Yes.
And so whenever there's families around, it's it can happen, but they're better. Get a permit for it. Have some cops there, but I'm a car enthusiast at heart. I want to see donuts happen.
Who doesn't want to see a killer burnout?
Who doesn't want to see burnouts? Yeah, everybody wants to see it. So it's just, and again, that's something that we can explore next time. But
we need to put
time and place, time and place for everything, right. And that's
There's gonna be a lot of trouble here to be found on Talking Gearheads.
Legal trouble. Yeah, legal trouble though. Fun trouble.
Fun legal trouble. Well, with that, gosh, I hate to let you go, but.
We'll do it again.
On the condition that we're going to come back.
We'll do it again.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I want you to thank Anthony Sanchez. I can't thank you enough, brother.
You bet.
It's people like this man that make the culture happen in Houston, that makes podcasts interesting. And there's, like you said, we're just getting started.
Just getting started.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.